Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Supercharge Sales-Driven Quoting and Order Orchestration with Salesforce RLM. I'm Matt Pross, Marketing Director at Argano, and I will be your moderator today. As some folks are still filtering in, let's cover some general housekeeping items about our webinar platform. If you have technical or content-related questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A window, and we will address your questions when we are able. Closed captioning is available by selecting the CC button in the bottom right corner of your media player screen. You can expand, minimize, and move each of the window panes displayed on your screen if needed. Be sure to check the related content section of your webinar console for relevant resources, including a PDF of today's presentation. If you don't see the related content module, click the paperclip in the navigation bar at the bottom of your screen. And finally, this presentation is being recorded, and we will send all registrants a link to the recording post-webinar. Now let's meet today's presenters. Derek Quinn, Client Success VP at Argano, is an expert in revenue transformation and Salesforce Revenue Cloud. Derek has more than 20 years of experience in revenue operations and has led countless transformation programs for clients in multiple industries. Prior to joining Argano, Derek had more than a decade of experience building leading Salesforce CPQ and billing practices at firms such as Deloitte. Blake Williams is a lead Salesforce solution architect at Argano, specializing in product-to-cash solutions powered by Salesforce Revenue Cloud and adjacent Salesforce technologies, supporting the full quote-to-cash lifecycle. Now, a bit about Argano. Argano is the digital consultancy for high-performance business operations. We help our clients adapt their services to meet the ever-evolving needs of their industry by crafting the right transformation strategy. This includes connecting the entire enterprise to enhance efficiency, optimize the operational environment for peak performance, and foster continuous improvement to drive profitability and growth. Our approach encompasses strategy and performance consulting, data and intelligence services, enterprise technology modernization, and managed services to ensure sustainable business outcomes and continued success for our clients. By leveraging industry best practices and providing actual insights, we ensure that your teams are equipped with the tools, knowledge, and strategies to lead in a dynamic environment. One last thing before we get started. Please use the Q&A window in the webinar console to enter any questions you have for our presenters at any time during today's webinar. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation. Now, without further delay, let's get started. Over to you, Derek.
Great, thanks, Matt. I want to start this conversation today and kind of frame up Salesforce Revenue Cloud. You guys probably noticed that we referenced RLM in the introduction of this presentation today, and it's been reshaped under Salesforce Revenue Cloud again. So for purposes of the demonstration today, we'll refer to it as Salesforce Revenue Cloud. And really, if you're familiar with Salesforce Revenue Cloud and sort of the direction that Salesforce has taken, you'll see that Salesforce is evolving more towards Revenue Cloud as a platform capability versus a packaged software capability. And so you'll hear Blake and others throughout this conversation today kind of reference the difference is really the packaged software versus where Salesforce is headed, which is really more Revenue Cloud as a platform, as a framework. So let me talk a little bit more about that. So Salesforce Revenue Cloud, as Salesforce is evolving, it's an application of integrated components that support the full product to cash lifecycle. And really, what does that mean? It's really a platform that allows for enterprise scale and extensibility. What does that mean even further? It's really a turnkey solution, so you can deploy the components as is. It's composable and flexible, and you'll hear a lot about that. as we continue this discussion today. It's assembling the components, integrating these things together across a landscape of tools and technologies. It's also extensible, so it can be 100% headless, utilizing this across Salesforce technologies and other technologies. An example of that might be maybe you have a third-party self-service portal that you're leveraging today that's managing maybe some of your business, and you want to integrate that into Revenue Cloud and leverage, for example, the product catalog or the pricing engine. So that's an example where it's extensible, it's composable, and it's flexible. The other thing is it's 100% native on the Salesforce platform. Really, the big transition for Salesforce is bringing this to what they call core and getting this out of that packaged software solution, as I mentioned earlier. By doing that, it makes it scalable. It gives them the ability to support higher transaction volumes, large quotes, and basically be able to tackle the high volumes that a lot of enterprise customers have. Below is just an example of some of the kind of key framework, value propositions of Revenue Cloud. Like I said, the composable product and pricing engine, the transaction management and CPQ, contract lifecycle management. That's an area that Salesforce is getting more into. Order to cash, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And then revenue lifecycle intelligence really is the, is the intelligence, the ability to take the data, mine the data out of Salesforce and start to drive sellers to more decisions based, leveraging the data that's collected through the quoting engine, Salesforce. Next slide. So now I want to talk a little bit about Revenue Cloud sweet spots and Argano's point of view on this. And this is just, I'll get to some example use cases where it really can make a huge impact on an organization in the next slide. But just to give you a little snippet, it's really these three categories on the left that we think are kind of differentiators for Revenue Cloud as it stands today. And that's really the enterprise scale and flexibility, the omni-channel, multi-channel buying and selling experience, and then advanced order management. Again, there's a whole exhaustive list of other things that Revenue Cloud's great at, but these are three that we think are pretty distinct and worth noting. Again, when we talk about composability, we're talking about a product catalog, a price management engine, product configuration, business rules, transaction management. Think of these as like composable items that you can piece together to solve a specific business problem. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the scalability, that high transaction volume, large quotes, large orders, those are sort of the kind of core benefits that you get. Then kind of going to the omni-channel buying and selling, this is really, think of this as sort of a self-service buying experience, B2B channel selling, right? Maybe you have a direct selling experience where you have sellers sitting in the chair selling directly to a customer, but you may also have sort of a self-service experience where you want to self-service enable that quoting experience and that selling channel. That's a great use case for Revenue Cloud. Headless APIs, again, like I mentioned earlier, make that very easy to integrate to other systems, other engines, maybe legacy technologies that you already have invested in, and you want to wire that into Revenue Cloud. Those headless APIs make that easier. The rules engine, the orchestrations, these are things that you can just leverage through those APIs and wire that into another system. And then the advanced order management, think of this as things that happen post-order. So orders get created, orders have line items. How do you decompose those orders? How do you figure out what to do with those orders post-order in Salesforce? And this is, again, an area of innovation for Salesforce Revenue Cloud. And Blake will talk a bit about this later. But being able to handle that order, dispatch that order, decompose that order, and figure out what to do with that order, these are advantages that we think really separate Salesforce Revenue Cloud now in this newer version. Next slide. I talked a little bit about some of the use cases. What are some unique things that we think Revenue Cloud solves that positions itself well in this industry, in this space? And this really the enterprise scale and flexibility, the extensibility, like I said, that omni-channel buying and selling experience, the advanced order management, selling products and services based on consumption, those complex use cases and those complex business rules, industry-specific use cases. We see this quite a bit. We're seeing an uptick in being able to leverage Revenue Cloud and transportation as an industry, a pretty unique industry use case that we haven't seen a lot, but that's an example of an industry-specific use case that Revenue Cloud shines in and actually can fit a lot of those use cases customers have. That high transaction volume situation, we see that quite often in the large quotes and orders. So there's a whole bunch of other, unique use cases that this can solve, but these are some that we thought were worth highlighting. Next slide. And now I'm going to hand this over to Blake Williams, who kind of will frame up the demo itself and take us through the demo. Over to you, Blake.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Derek. I'm going to start by providing a high-level orientation of what you're going to see in the demo. We'll start by showing an example of how core Revenue Cloud components can be assembled to optimize B2B direct sales process from quoting through customer onboarding. And as Derek talked a little bit about, the examples we'll cover are going to be geared more toward high-tech providers of cloud-based software and applications. And we'll highlight how the solution capabilities can be applied to a range of products and industries, right? Transportation, as an example, manufacturing, med device, so on and so forth. And so we think of this example as the, call it, product side of Revenue Cloud, where the core components that you see of the software can be assembled, call it in their more native standard configuration to provide what we consider as a turnkey solution for traditional quote-to-cash use cases. So core components including catalog-driven product selection, the product configuration engine, pricing, transaction management across quotes and orders and contracts, order management and orchestration itself, and contract lifecycle management. So one of our focus areas in this is going to be demonstrating how the order orchestration engine itself can be leveraged to decompose the commercial products that are quoted and ordered in a deal into their constituent technical products and orchestrate their fulfillment and delivery to the customer. And you can see as depicted in the diagram, this includes illustrating the integration between the Salesforce front office system of record for revenue with the various business applications and cloud backends that make up an IT landscape. All right, so that's the product side of Revenue Cloud. We'll also demonstrate a handful of examples leveraging what we think of as the platform side of Revenue Cloud, where through business APIs and API-first invocable processes, those same core components, objects, and engines, right, catalog, configuration, pricing, transaction management, those can all be assembled for more traditional use cases and can be exposed to provide more, call it bespoke experiences and self-service processes for both internal and external users. So some examples we'll highlight will be self-service. So self-service provisioning of cloud services initiated through a customer portal running on Salesforce Experience Cloud. Self-service ordering of additional cloud credits through a marketplace that could also be built on Experience Cloud. It could be built using cloud-native technologies as well. UI UX extensions for location-based quoting and ordering built using Salesforce platform technologies, Lightning Web Components, and platform automation as an example. And then lastly, it kind of driving to a more bespoke user experience to optimize for sales guidance regarding product and packaging upgrade and downgrade scenarios. Okay. Let's go ahead and shift over to the demo. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And let's get started. So I'm starting as a sales persona here, creating a quote for a new business opportunity in Salesforce. And I'll accept the defaults and move on to my quote and pick a catalog of products to select from. I'll select the cloud product catalog. We'll see the marketplace one used later on in the demo. And we'll see the catalog organizes my product and packaging strategy, platforms, subscriptions, add-ons, and cloud credits. And the editions themselves are sold in a good, better, best model with different specifications and limits applied to entitled cloud services. Applications here are sold in a seat-based subscription model where I'll specify the number of licenses for each. In this case, revenue, sales, and service. Next, I'll estimate usage volumes for an add-on service that follows a consumption model. And lastly, specify the number of cloud credits that can be exchanged for additional resource usage on the platform exceeding my prescribed limits. So I'll review my products and quantities and go ahead and save them to my quote. Now on my quote, I have a mix of products, units of measure, and pricing models that I can tailor for my customer. And I'll start by configuring the Revenue Hub bundle, which applies rules-based business logic through validation and include-exclude rules for required and optional components and add-ons that are bundled with each of my packages. So I'll select and save an optional add-on and keep the default packaging for my other bundles here on the quote. Moving to pricing, I'll specify discounts to be negotiated with my customers, starting with a percentage-based line level discretionary discount here. And then I'll also specify a target amount. This is my customer's budget, where the pricing engine has been configured to spread this discount amount across the discount eligible products that can receive them. So we'll look at the price waterfall, and this provides detailed visibility into how the final price of a product is determined and gives me insight into the various stages of price calculation. I see a list, I see a mix of system-driven and discretionary discounts, and I also see different products have different price calculation models and sequences here as well. All right, so I'll go ahead and simulate customer acceptance of my quote by using the submit button here, which automates the rest of the sales process and transaction management. So my quote is set to accepted, my opportunity is set to close won. I have a commercial contract that is created and executed, and finally an order is created, activated, and submitted to start the product fulfillment and delivery process here. So shifting to order management, I can see my sold commercial products have been reflected on my customer's order, and the system has decomposed them into instances of technical products that can be fulfilled and ultimately delivered to my customer. So I can see my cloud platform has been decomposed into many technical products here, and giving a quick preview of the product fulfillment decomposition rules, I can see how the system supports decomposing the sales commercial bill of materials into the engineering or delivery bill of materials here, which is applicable to high tech, but also other industries as well, manufacturing being a key example of an engineering BOM, right, of many lines ultimately needing to be picked, packed, and shipped to the customer. So looking at the fulfillment plan itself, this orchestrates the end-to-end process for delivery and has been designed with a combination of auto tasks and system automation, workflow and dependency management, integration callouts to backend systems, pause steps to wait on integrated processes, and milestone completion as well. So I can now look at the runtime view of that same plan here in the context of my order, and I see that it's waiting for the asynchronous automation to complete. When it does, I'll see my pre-fulfillment steps move from pending to completed, starting with a call to action to sales operations to review order details prior to initiating software delivery here. So now in the platform, I can see I have a task tied to my fulfillment plan. I can complete that, and then back in the runtime instance of my plan, I'll see those steps adapt to completed and move to the next dependent step in the plan, which is to capture tenant information here directly from my customer. So back now in Experience Cloud as a customer, I have an alert as a call to action to provide tenant information related to my new production environment being provisioned. And I have a case here that gives me visibility into the fulfillment plan process and the different milestones here that we saw right in my fulfillment plan that have now been exposed to my customer to provide progress and status on software delivery. I can provide information here as part of that, giving my tenant a long name, a short name, some additional information here. And I'll see as a customer providing that information now adapts the fulfillment plan and software delivery process here to progress to the next set of steps in the process. So you'll see I'm in the cloud infrastructure step group, and I have an auto task here that actually publishes a platform event to my integration platform. Could be MuleSoft, could be Boomi, but that's going to orchestrate the integration to my cloud-enabled applications. Right here, shifting back to the diagram that we saw, moving from fulfillment workflow to integration platform, and to the orchestration of the business apps and cloud backends that ultimately are responsible for provisioning my software. I can simulate the completion of that process here in Salesforce for my fulfillment order product, where I see the tenant name's been provided because the customer provided it. And now the software has been installed. And I can see that the plan will adapt to that, moving from in progress to completed and moving to the next dependent steps in the process. Here, automatically deploying the cloud applications to that tenant. Back in my portal, I can see the milestones have been updated, and I have direct visibility into that through my case. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and show tools configuration and getting to the end of software delivery here, where there's a final solution quality control check that's completed, and I can see the remaining delivery steps move to green. A key one here is publishing the trigger to start recognizing revenue now that my performance obligation has been satisfied on software delivery. Now looking at the Customer 360 in Salesforce, I see all of my assets have been activated. I have a couple pending activation, more on that in a moment here. I have my fulfillment assets that were created by my fulfillment plan as well. Again, the technical products or delivery bomb, if you will. And I have a cloud platform that the system tracks along with its key information that also has a set of resources and limits tied to the platform. These are the cloud services and resources the customer is entitled to at prescribed limits, overages which will be charged cloud credits. And more on that in a moment. But if I go back to my customer homepage, I have visibility into the monitoring and usage of my cloud platform. And you'll see the same information that I saw on the Customer 360 is exposed here for me as a customer, right? Where I can see my resources, their units of measure, their prescribed limits, and their overage rate of cloud credits. I can see the features that I'm entitled to and that are available on that cloud platform. So I'm going to go ahead and look at a composability use case here, right, of leveraging business APIs from, in this case, Experience Cloud to self-service requests of provisioning of an additional service here. So I'm ready to start using advanced quote configuration, and I can request the provisioning of that service. That wasn't immediately provisioned for me because it represents a material cost to the customer. And I can see that provisioning that creates a new order in Revenue Cloud for me that automatically relates the commercial product, in this case, Revenue Hub, and the advanced quote configuration. And I can see that's been decomposed to a new fulfillment product that's being added. Just like in the first case, I have a fulfillment plan and that's specific to this particular product. That's waiting, that has published a platform event, right, to be deployed to the backend application. And I can simulate the activation of that service here, simulating a callback from my integration platform back into Salesforce. And I'll see my plan adapt and ultimately turn to green here, notifying my customer that the service has been activated. And I can see my Customer 360 adapt to that, where now my advanced quote configuration has a status of activated and is no longer pending activation. And I can see now my dashboard and portal adapts to that same information as well. I have an incremental quote configuration feature and no longer pending activation. So what I'll do here is I'll refresh my performance monitor dashboard, and I can see my, get a picture of resource consumption. Again, these are my platform resources, overages to which consume cloud credits, and I can see my balance management here as well against my total of 1,200 cloud credits that I initially ordered as a customer. So I have a call to action here to go to the marketplace. This is exposing Revenue Cloud data and processes. Remember, we saw the different catalogs. This is the marketplace catalog that I can expose through a different channel for environments, standard-based templates, and in this case, cloud credits, which I want to incrementally purchase more of because I'm starting to burn hot on my usage. I have different product selling models here between annual recurring and a one-time pack of this particular product. I'll choose the one-time pack, add the quantity, and I see pricing exposed here from Revenue Cloud. And I can continue with, this is actual product configuration. Again, that engine exposed in a composable manner here for a self-service ordering flow. And you can guess what happens next. In submitting the order, we'll create another order in Revenue Cloud to ultimately track the provisioning and allocation of these cloud credits. So now I have a third order here, and I can see my commercial sold product for the one-time pack of cloud credits at a price that's decomposed. And it's interesting that it's decomposed into an existing fulfillment order item. It's going to amend this quantity here by publishing a platform event to have that new balance allocated. And I can see my platform monitor adapt to that here, going from 1200 to 700, and my balance adjusting here as well. So pausing for just a minute on that first piece, right? And what we saw, again, the components deployed as turnkey solution and then for composability. So fast forwarding a little bit, we're going to look at another example here, shifting gears to more sales-driven guidance here in a scenario, again, working as sales from a qualified opportunity, creating a quote, navigating a catalog here, selecting from a handful of products between a platform, different packages that I can add. You'll see the catalog here provides some search and filtering capability here to make it easy to find products, especially when I have a large catalog of sellable products and SKUs. And I can see the quotes or products being added to my quote here and go ahead and save. What I want to highlight here is another extensibility and composability use case here is I'll see that I have distinct sold products on my quote lines. And what I'm going to do is show composability through the Lightning platform here in the form of a Lightning web component to associate sold products to the different locations that they're ultimately to be delivered to. So I have different software products here that need to be delivered to different locations. And that's what I'm scrolling through here on the right. I can filter by different criteria here. And so I want to associate Care Metrics Insights and the Core Chart long-term care package to these different locations and their types. And I want to associate these other sold products to different locations. As sales, it's important that I'm able to do this all as part of one deal. But I want this to be intuitive and easy for me to work through, leveraging the same components of Revenue Cloud, right, that we looked at in the more traditional quote-to-cash use case. So I can do that here, and I can go ahead and calculate price too, and we'll see the pricing engine automatically adapts to those associations, and I see updated quantities and pricing based on the association, again, of my sold products in the form of quote lines and all of my quote line associations here to the locations to where they'll ultimately be delivered. This is a good example of the composability and flexibility of transaction management here, in that, as we'll see on the opportunity, I can submit this and the system will automate the acceptance of my quote, the close winning of my opportunity to align with the forecast and trigger compensation management. It will create an order from my quote that I can see here as well. And the order will now contain all of my sold products permuted by the locations ultimately to where they're to be delivered, because they need to be billed. Revenue needs to be recognized for those products and those locations. And ultimately, the assets need to be managed on a location by location basis. So if I come here now to my account, my order has been activated, and all of my assets, again, for the sold products by account line have been created here, governed by the transaction management capabilities of Revenue Cloud. All right. Expanding on this example just a little bit here, I can see that it also works for amendments and contract changes, which is, of course, a common use case for B2B sales and quoting. And so I have my existing contract here that was established, and I want to quote an add-on to my customer. And so now I have some flexibility to be able to do that without being constrained to the scope of all of my assets under this particular contract. So I can come here back to the catalog and specify the product that I want to sell as an add-on. In this case, the Farmer Connect. I can go ahead and pick the specific locations that I want to provide that to. Could be the same or different ones that I sold into originally. And then additionally, I can go to the assets related to this contract, all as part of this same quote. And I have an option to filter specific to the products and locations that I want. And I can go ahead and remove those as well and have all of these changes tracked as part of the same quote. Again, looking at the composability of transaction management capabilities for Revenue Cloud. And so I can see as part of pricing, the system will automatically create those transactions for me on the quote, a mix of both add-ons and cancellations for the assets that are being removed. And progressing this quote to order an asset will now align my customer's install base with those changes. Okay. Moving on, another, you call it platform-focused scenario here, and looking at some of the extensibility of Revenue Cloud. I have an account, I have an active contract with a number of assets here. And as sales, I want to look at migrating this customer to my new product and packaging structure here. So I have different components here representing the product catalog on the left, what the customer currently has in terms of existing assets in the middle, and where those assets are located. And so I want to quote them a new core chart package and have guidance on what existing a la carte assets would be impacted by that upgrade. I also want to understand where those existing a la carte assets are located so that I can confirm that I want those locations to be impacted by this quote here. And you'll see I have some affordances from a UI perspective to both filter to that and to select new locations as well that ultimately I want to sell this new upgrade package to. So I'll select a couple of additional locations here, and I can add this, and I can see a price impact. I can also see a summary. And one thing to call out here is this is all happening outside of the context of a distinct quote. We'll go there next, but you'll see I have some extensibility of the different configuration and pricing engines here that I'm exposing, again, through a more bespoke user interface and guided process here to help my sales users figure out, ultimately what they want to upgrade this particular customer to based on what they already have, right? So I'm also going to look at another example here for a downgrade. And I have some more UI affordances here to automatically enforce some selections for me. So my nursing elements package here is related to my existing nursing care value package as well. I have other products like value insurance services that are part of that package. And so what I want to do is offer those things as well and ultimately downgrade the customer from nursing care value to these two a la carte offerings that are related to that package here. So I can add those. I can see my price impact here again, running the pricing engine outside of the context of a specific quote. And now I have a nice summary of all the actions that I'm looking to take for this particular customer across the products that they have today the action being taken on them, the products that they'll ultimately map to, and the different locations that would ultimately be impacted between an existing change as well as new locations where the products are being added. Finally, I can create a quote for all of these changes, again, leveraging the extensibility of transaction management, taking all the changes, the products, their pricing, and creating a quote with all of the right actions that we saw in the summary between products being added and existing a la carte products either being removed in lieu of a new package or being added as well in terms of a downgrade. Okay. So one more quick example here, just showing again the flexibility of looking at the same contract and seeing that I have an option to take a different path here to start with the assets that a customer has. And then in the middle, seeing my product catalog. And again, on the right, seeing where those existing assets are located. And so I have an extra UI affordance here that tells me what action I can take as sales on my customer's existing assets, right? In this case, I can do a package swap of nursing care value to my existing product catalog. And I can select an additional asset here to upgrade, again, to my core chart package. On the left, I can see what locations are impacted by this change. I can add additional locations that I want to add my new package to, right? In this case, core chart long-term care. And I can see a summary of that, of going from my existing assets upgraded to my core chart long-term care package, and where what locations it's also being added to. And just rounding out this example as well, this also works in a couple other cases here as well. I'll select another existing package asset that's eligible for downgrade. In this case, it's made up of the following a la carte products in my catalog. My customer wants to keep 2 of those and bypass the 3rd, so I can make those elections here. And again, I can then specify which locations I want these changes to apply to, both the existing locations as well as any new locations that I want to add private chat and auto care notify to. And I can make those changes here. I can add those products. I can ultimately view a summary of all my changes as well and the actions being taken. And once I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and create a Revenue Cloud quote using the transaction management capabilities of the platform and proceed with my quote from there. In the first case, just as in the first case, you'll see that the software provides for getting the right products on the quote with the right action codes and ultimately the right pricing based on the actions being taken, i.e. products being added, as well as existing assets being canceled. So this rounds out the demonstration portion of the presentation. Here we'll see just a little bit of wrap up on what we saw, which again, and let me go ahead and stop sharing so we can go back to the presentation. And then I'll just spend a minute wrapping up on what we saw. Again, we saw really, we think of as two examples of Revenue Cloud and call it power of what you get with the components provided through the software. The first we think of as the product side, where the core components can be assembled in their standard configuration and provide a turnkey solution for traditional quote-to-cash use cases. Product configuration, pricing, transaction management, order management and orchestration, so on and so forth. And then we saw more of the platform side of extensibility and composability of those same core components, objects, and engines, how those can be leveraged. Those same engines, data, processes can be leveraged to provide more bespoke experience and self-service processes for both internal sales users as well as external users and ultimately the customer. Matt and Derek, back to you.
Hey, thanks, Blake. Appreciate it. That was a great demo.
Yeah,
All
good
right.
job, Blake.
Now, at this time, if you haven't already, please enter your questions into the Q&A module. In the meantime, we do have a few questions to address right now, so we'll get started. Blake, I think this one's for you. Question is, can we customize the orchestration?
Yes. Yeah, it is fully configurable and customizable in terms of, if you remember what you saw were different step groups between, well, I need to deploy cloud infrastructure. I need to deploy applications to that infrastructure. I need to do some environment tools configuration, and maybe it's IDP security configuration. Maybe there's a delivery step in there, so on and so forth. It's completely configurable and customizable to your products, your services, your delivery processes, the different applications that you have in your IT landscape that are ultimately responsible for delivering products. By the way, those products could be software, they could be hard goods and physical goods, they could be professional services, they could often be a mix of those three things, right, that have their own fulfillment and delivery paths. And that's really where, in our minds, the power of the dynamic revenue orchestrator engine comes in. Is it's really all about configuring and caring for different paths for delivery for those different products.
Yeah, and just to add on or pile on, good summary, Blake. The other thing I'd add too is one of the use cases that we've seen quite a bit, and especially pick on manufacturing as an example, right? Where what happens inside of Salesforce from a seller quoting perspective, and then what actually has to happen, let's say downstream when I actually have to build the widget. And as Blake kind of said, you know, orchestration of like all the things that have to happen, let's say in a manufacturing use case, that's an example of something that would have been challenging in previous, you know, history with Salesforce, is being able to handle sort of that, call it the bill of material, right? So translating what comes out of that sales experience to what actually has to happen downstream for things to happen in a manufacturing use case. That's a great example of where DRO, as Blake described it, that could actually handle a lot of that orchestration of things that have to happen in a manufacturing use case. It could be leveraged across a lot of different use cases.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Actually, our next question kind of plays off that one. So, you know, what are some other reasons if you're currently using the legacy Salesforce CPQ package, what are some other reasons why you should consider adopting the new Revenue Cloud platform?
You want to take that, Blake? I can.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I think when looking at technology and tool change and adoption, it has to be more than just a lift and shift. There has to be real ROI behind the change. In our experience, we found uptaking the new latest and greatest features of Revenue Cloud provide organizations an opportunity to reimagine a lot of their business processes and optimize for user experience, optimize for performance. It's a great opportunity to look at SKU rationalization, which often is something that can start to hamstring organizations over time using CPQ, especially with lots and lots of sold products offered slightly differently with different pricing in different regions to different customer types, so on and so forth. A lot of that can start to look like SKU proliferation. And so Revenue Cloud and adopting the latest and greatest is really a good opportunity, especially adopting the product catalog management capabilities to look at doing a SKU rat. Yeah, Derek, other thoughts on that?
I mean, I think what Blake said, it was spot on. The way we try to position this is it's not, to Blake's point, you shouldn't approach this as a lift and shift. I mean, a lot of the clients that we work with, through a lot of reasons that are justifiable based on their business needs, have customized the CPQ package product to meet the needs of the organization. A lot of our company clients that we work with have grown a lot through acquisitions over time. And so they've outgrown their CPQ implementation. So we like to approach this a little bit different and not look at this as just, like Blake said, a lift and shift of moving out of one piece of software into another. We like to look at this as an opportunity to reimagine everything, right? So for example, maybe you've been thinking about a multi-channel strategy. You want to leverage the same, let's call it quoting foundations. You need a product catalog, you need a pricing engine, you need these components to serve multiple channels. We like to look at this as an opportunity to reimagine what you're trying to do, where you're trying to take your organization, and then approach it that way versus just coming out of a set of features and functions out of the packaged software, and then how do I move those things to the new world? So product rationalization is a great example Blake brought up, right? We see that all the time, lots of SKU proliferation. Why not take this as an opportunity to try to simplify as you transition and move out of the packaged software to this new world?
Yeah, I'd say one other good theme that we've heard as well is organizations looking to roll out a new product and packaging strategy. Obviously, that has a SKU rationalization component to it. It has a product catalog component to it as well, but that's also a good opportunity as a way to leverage the tool to execute on that business driver, for your organization. There's a sales change to that as well, a quoting change, a pricing change. So that's another good common driver to this as well.
Okay, thanks, guys. Another question, looks like this one's around migration strategy. So we've implemented the CPQ package. What does an adoption strategy look like for Revenue Cloud, and what are considerations?
Yeah, I can start with this one. So the first question that's worth asking is there a distinct process or channel that can be identified where it would benefit from adopting Revenue Cloud for that purpose? As an example, is there a self-service ordering or reordering application that needs to be stood up or would benefit from being optimized and enhanced through Revenue Cloud? Is there a marketplace channel that the organization is looking to get more traction behind that would benefit from exposing Revenue Cloud data and processes, right, through an external channel? Is there a distinct line of business or a new product offering that's looking to be rolled out and looking where, time to value is of the essence and wanting to fast track the rollout of that? So I'd say the first question is there something distinct where an organization can carve out a process, a product line, a user group, a business unit, where it makes the adoption smaller and more contained? Question number one. Question number two is then, if not, is there a coexistence strategy that can be pursued between the current tool, and it could be an on-platform CPQ tool like Salesforce CPQ, it could be another tool, but is there a coexistence strategy that can be pursued between the current on-platform CPQ tool and the latest and greatest Revenue Cloud features? There's a number of considerations to think about in terms of looking at coexistence and whether that makes sense for the organization. Data migration is obviously always a major consideration. The customer's install-based source of truth and what's ultimately being used to reflect that and track that Is it CPQ subscriptions? Is it assets? Is it service contracts and lines? Is it some combination of those two? Is it something else? Right? So looking at essentially how you have a clean cutover and separation between the two, right, drives the decision on coexistence, as well as how distinct you can make the different processes and channels that would be leveraging the different tools.
Yeah, and just to double click on that, I mean, it's really what Blake's talking about when we're talking about coexistence really kind of comes down to a decision that the organization needs to make. Do you want to do a big bang, which is really sort of like, I'm going to make this shift. It's going to happen on this day and this time, and we're going to cut over everything over to new and shut down old? Or do you want to do that in more of a phased rollout? To Blake's point, do you pick something new and put that in new first and then roll over in a phased approach to take things out of old and into new? There's different ways to tackle that, and I think that's something we can help our clients think through. It's something you have to think through. That big bang approach is an approach that works for some organizations. There's a lot of change impact with something like that, and a lot of considerations you need to think about. Whereas the phased approach might be more palatable because you're introducing the change over time, and maybe the coexistence thing, as Blake mentioned, that's something that is worth considering, is figuring out a way to maintain old and new and some sort of phased approach, and then eventually cut over when you feel comfortable. So it's something that, we'd love to talk to you about and understand kind of, what your thoughts are on it and how you might approach that internally and how we can help you think through that.
Perfect. Thanks again. All right, last question today. Can we default quantities in the quote, such as basing them on account or location?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yes, we can absolutely do that. And there's a number of ways to do that. That can happen through platform automation. It can happen as a function of pricing. Going back to just hitting on the pricing piece of Revenue Cloud, it gives you a lot of flexibility on where information lives that you ultimately want to price off of. So you're really not tied to the specific product. You're not even tied to the account hierarchy as well that you're quoting against. Information in terms of what feeds pricing and ultimately the resulting line item quantity can come from anywhere, and you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you pull that information into the pricing engine at runtime when the pricing procedure runs.
Great, thank you, Blake.
Bet.
All right, so that's it for today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us. If you're interested in learning more about Salesforce Revenue Cloud or how Argano can help your organization adopt Revenue Cloud, please email Derek at derek.quinn@argano.com.
Yeah,
enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.